There could be a Wendigo waiting in the woods for you, and you won't know until you go out there and explore, and it's too late. One of my followers named Chris sent me their Wendigo encounter, and y'all, I have woods behind my house, and trust, I will not be exploring it anytime soon. Chris told me he said this story on Reddit, but he wants more people to hear about it. So this all happened to Chris when he was around 10 years old. He's lived in Idaho all his life and spent a lot of time outdoors or in the wilderness just exploring. His grandparents would take him camping, and him and his older brother would always hike up whatever trails they could find to watch the sunset. On one of these occasions, Chris told me something terrifying happened. So there was a campsite known as Warm River, and both him and his brother were on a regular evening hike. There was an old tunnel that led through the mountain at one point in the trail. He told me it was probably an old train tunnel, but as they were walking through it, Chris heard something he'll never forget. After walking probably 2/3 of the way through the tunnel, Chris heard a terrible screech at the end where they entered through. He told me the screech wasn't like anything he has ever heard before. He told me he's heard the sound of animals on dark and windy days, so he's familiar with that sound, but never the metallic grinding screech that he heard that day. The point is, whatever the sound was did not sound natural at all. He told me he probably jumped 5 feet in the air when he heard it, and his brother ended up shouting a few curse words before they had to exit the tunnel. So that was just the first little encounter, the calm before the storm. Now fast forward, a few weeks later, Chris went up to Pine Basin, an old ski lodge his family rented out each year for family reunions. He told me here he would mess around with his cousins in a scary way, and their favorite activities were night games. They would play hide and seek, a game called Ghost in the Graveyard, and other scary games like that. Chris told me they decided to all play hide and seek, and he was chosen as the seeker. Now keep in mind, their game of hide and seek was not an indoor activity. This was outside in the woods around the ski lodge. Now because at the time Chris was one of the younger cousins, he was able to use a flashlight as an advantage while being the seeker. He told me that normally all the younger cousins hid close to the lodge, and the older cousins hid in the nearby trees or at the base near the mountain. As Chris was searching near the bottom of the mountain, he told me that he ended up hearing a whistle, which was a familiar whistle up in the mountain. Keep in mind, they would always whistle as a hint of their locations. He said it sounded like someone was hiding up way up in the mountain near this tree called the underwear tree, so he decided to walk towards the whistle. As he climbed closer, Chris told me he got an uneasy feeling in his stomach. He continued on cautiously and convinced himself that there was no danger, it's all fine, it's just a game. Chris told me he also hated walking in the night alone, but he figured whoever that he would find up in that mountain would walk back with him to the lodge. As he neared the tree, Chris said that he noticed that it was deathly silent. There was no sound, nothing. Like you could not hear insects, you couldn't hear birds, it was just silence. This alerted him that something was very wrong because like I said, you would be able to hear things surrounding the area, but you could not hear anything. He even said it was strange because you could always hear the adults having fun back at the lodge, but once again, you could not hear anything. It was just silence. He told me that he was so anxious to hurry back that he ended up calling out, "I found you, Scott, come back down with me," thinking that the whistle that he heard was his older cousin. Chris told me he got no reply, but he was not planning on waiting. Now, as Chris began walking back down the path, he heard a voice call, "You almost had me," so he ran back up to investigate. This was the biggest mistake ever. As he flashed his flashlight in the branches of the tree, he saw a monstrosity that was not his cousin. He told me it looked like a poorly drawn stick figure made into a human with its skeletal figure and lifeless eyes. He told me this entity or creature, whatever it was, its face looked like the skin on its head was being pulled from behind. He remembers it having torn and stretched features. As soon as Chris saw this creature, he screamed, dropped the flashlight, and ran back to the lodge. Chris told me the entire time that he ran, he was overcome by this overpowering smell, and he could hear the thing running after him. As he approached the camp, he saw a few people, which happened to be his cousins, at the bottom of the mountain waiting for him. Chris said he was crying and shaking, and they took him inside. He told his dad what happened, but all of his cousins said they didn't see anything following Chris from behind. The adults ended up keeping them all inside for the night, and Chris said he kept hearing sounds drifting in from the mountain. He's never played night games after that happened and was always worried that his cousins would not take his warning seriously. Ever since that night, Chris has always felt uneasy up in those mountains. Those mountains have never felt the same to Chris ever since that incident, and at first he told me that he thought it was a demon until he finally got into the game Until Dawn and watched walkthroughs of it. When the Wendigo first appeared in the game, he got instant chills down his spine. It was exactly what he saw, exactly what he heard, and after that he did a ton of research on them. Chris told me he still hears that screech from time to time, and he still wonders to this day what would have happened if that thing, that creature, the Wendigo, caught up to him.